Hey, it's been a little while. Welcome back to Tier 3 of the comprehensive M.U.G.E.N Iceberg experience. If this is your first time here, unlike the last video, I'll say you should probably go back and watch at least Tier 2 for a little more context and things to come. If you want to ignore that warning, then here's a quick rundown. M.U.G.E.N is a free fighting game engine for custom content. People make characters, stages, literally whatever you want. It goes in there. This series is basically me smushing together 3 and now 4 separate M.U.G.E.N Icebergs to create the full experience to the best of my abilities. I don't want to spend too long on this intro because most of you have been waiting probably eons for this part to come out, so the sooner I get done with this, the sooner we can get on with it. I would like to say I have unlocked channel membership. Currently the only reward right now is a very bare bones Discord server because I don't know what I'm doing, but if you like the content and you want to support the channel, it's $5 and I would greatly appreciate it. As always, hit the like button if you like it, go down and hit the subscribe button. Only some percentage of you watching this are subscribed. I will show that number on the screen, so if you're one of those, you know what to do. Anyway, that's enough. Let's get into the new segment, which is corrections and bonus entries. Let's go. I was asked by Koi to include a section that wasn't included in any of the Icebergs for Orochi Edits, so here's a quick rundown. Orochi Edits refers to, similarly to Donald Edits, the vast amount of edits for the character Orochi, the final boss of King of Fighters 97, as well as his clone Mizuchi, who appears in Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. By far the most well-known edit is Crazy Catastrophe, which is specifically based on Mizuchi and gets his own entry later in the Iceberg. A few other well-known edits would be God Orochi, one of the earliest Orochi edits, and considered extremely groundbreaking at the time. Mintechi and Zerozuchi, created by Dante Akashiya, who are just very strange. Metal Orochi, who is also weird and has a bunch of sub-edits. World of M.U.G.E.N is just an army of Orochis. And an interesting one called Legend Metal Gold Orochi III, which has either been lost or never existed to begin with, leading to the name Fake-Ass Legend Metal Gold Orochi. One final note about Orochi edits is that they're almost all universally designed to be cheap and unfair, presumably to keep in the spirit of Orochi and Mizuchi being bogus, nasty SNK bosses, which are notorious for their difficulty. POTS style is CVS gameplay without grooves, not with. It has mechanics of each groove built into the characters, but they don't have access to the genuine feature itself. Thank you Raging Rowan, one of the Iceberg creators, for letting me know about that. Also, Hyper DBZ POTS style was just funny kerning on the Iceberg itself. That's not an actual entry, although anything is possible in the world of M.U.G.E.N. Speaking on that point really quick, everybody has told me that it's M.U.G.E.N, not M.U.G.E.N. Yes, I know, the Japanese word for infinite, M.U.G.E.N. The guy from Samurai Champloo, M.U.G.E.N. That's how it's pronounced. We are trying to unlearn, like, well over a decade of me saying it this way. Believe me, I have tried. It's not happening. I'm so sorry. Judge Spears' Peter Griffin was featured on an episode of Attack of the Show, where the hosts were convinced it was a super detailed ROM hack of Marvel vs. Capcom, because they had no idea what M.U.G.E.N was and somehow never bothered to fact check anything before sending it straight to television. Gygus XXX was possibly not an edit of Heltos Guigus, just heavily inspired by it. As well, there is an explanation of the safe version of Gygus XXX here by Kipwich that you can read here. Explanations of nulls will be covered in this video, with dragons being covered in a later tier, but for now just know that the dragon tier of character generally refers to a character bundled with and designed to execute malware, although that's not always true. It gets very confusing. Cheapy tiers are a whole rabbit hole that we discuss and controversies about naming schemes. Just try not to worry about it for right now. The modern Guro Spoo may have been made totally out of spite, according to this comment here. Mystery 107 asked if I could make an entry for Colonel Edits, so here it is. Colonel Edits refers to the myriad of edits of the Colonel Sanders character, the KFC mascot counterpart to the classic McDonald's mascot, and longtime common M.U.G.E.N entity Donald McDonald. Keeping in the theme of the rivalry between these characters, people have also taken to making an astounding amount of edits of the old Colonel, ranging from the classic cheap edits like Killer Colonel and Dark Colonel to MVC and other style conversions to joke edits like Weird Sanders and Sir Nice Owner. There seems to be a few few creators specifically dedicated to making these edits, such as Peg, Eric Anderson, and the commenter himself, Totally Not Mystery, aka Mystery107 on YouTube, who showcases a lot of these edits if you're interested in seeing them in action. Rarakuma was named as such because of how difficult it was to obtain truly cheap characters at the time of his creation. The first ever Suave Dude was actually created by Paper Guy 1, now known as Pause Time M.U.G.E.N, and it was a sprite swap, oh my god, it was a sprite swap of Eraser. Hey, this is a fun one. I was contacted by Zelsamo, the creator of KOF Memorial. He is not dead, nor is he strictly making lewd art, and I now have links for his active main Twitter and YouTube channel in the description. If you're interested in KOF Memorial or anything else he's done, and preferably speak Spanish, definitely check him out. Okay, so Donald Core was actually referring to the Donald Core, Donald McDonald's 11th color palette, which I've talked about briefly, where he brings along 7 other copies of himself to just effectively bully the opponent. Donald Core is still a hilarious aesthetic name, though, and that should totally stick around. This comment here from Sakurain, which just further reinforces how perfectly the M.U.G.E.N community and the Toho community fit in with each other. I'll leave this up for a little bit so you can read it. Some characters have more than 12 palette options, with POTS developing specific code for this function, although I assume other techniques to achieve this exist as well. Somehow I have completely neglected to talk about the wildly popular Super Mario character. No clue how I missed this one, so here it is. Super Mario is a character made by Shinryoga, now known as Shin Samus, and Neoonk, who I believe we both talked about in previous entries. This iteration of the Mario character is possibly the most well-known and one of the most well-made versions of that character. He plays very similarly to the Shoto archetype of fighting game characters. Think Ryu from Streets. Fireballs, Tatsus, Shoryus, and a combo-oriented game plan, but simple enough with versatile tools to be both picked up easily by new players and do well at higher levels. Mario being a Shoto also falls in line with his appearances in his actual fighting games, being the Smash series and the Kart Fighter. Outside of just being a very fun, very well-crafted character, he also has 3 alternate forms based on palette, being Matrix Mario, trading defense for speed and a time slow ability, Ghost Mario, who can't be hit but his life is slowly draining to 0 and has some other weird features, and Stone Mario, who is much slower and has many restrictions but an immense defense against the opponent's combos. There is a Super Luigi made by the two as well, who plays nearly identically to Mario, but with the usual Luigi-like adjustments to stats that you'd assume he has. Vidya Batter wanted to see some coverage on a topic not present in any of the Icebergs, so why not? Let's cover it here. Joey Faust, also known as Team Faust Games, TFG German, or Fistman is Back, is a M.U.G.E.N content creator known for an absolutely mind-boggling 585 characters at the time of writing this script and nearly 100 stages. Mainly based on Fido's Street Fighter 2 characters, he creates anything from fairly high-quality sprite swaps to full-on unique character conversions. A good example of this is his take on Wigglytuff. While technically a conversion of Street Fighter 2's Guile, it has many unique features such as the ability to inhale enemies and a lack of Guile's traditional charge inputs. The other half of this entry is the full game created by Joey Faust known as Team Faust Games Arena Fighters. This is a game featuring, similar to its creator, a staggering amount of characters ranging from OCs to Street Fighters and Mega Man to Mace the Dark Age and goddamn Bio Freaks. One shortcoming I suppose is that his OC's art is a little amateur, but honestly that's such a minor concern with how much passion he's put into his work on M.U.G.E.N in general. Also now, I have also been sent another M.U.G.E.N Iceberg made by King Demonic 666, so fantastic. Even more going into here. That Iceberg hasn't added anything really in the previous tiers. I think the only thing I've missed is Big Bird, and I'll just talk about that here really quick, just off the cuff, no script. Big Bird's a pretty infamous M.U.G.E.N character, made by a completely unknown author. There's 2 versions, basically just with alternate stats and a different palette on the second one. Both characters are technically a sprite swap of FRS Games' Kakaroto Super Saiyan 8, as well as a lot of sprites taken from Warner's Giant Chicken. This character is featured pretty often in M.U.G.E.N YouTube videos, like the Angry Video Game Nerds M.U.G.E.N video that he did with Mike Matei. This guy shows up in there, and I guess I should have mentioned this first. It's Big Bird from Sesame Street. You probably noticed that seeing the footage, but yes, very interesting character. And that's it for corrections. So yeah, 3 pages. That was long. Please, if you have any more from previous videos or this videos, okay, leave leave them in the comments. I'm happy to do this. I want these to be as comprehensive as possible, so I would prefer as little misinformation as possible, especially stuff like coming up in this tier. There's a lot of back-end information about code and specific interactions that I'm doing my best to parse and sort of explain in a way that is simple enough that if you're like me and do not understand that, you will hopefully get it. Again, if I get anything wrong, please let me know and I will make an addendum in the next video. At the end of this series, I think I've said this before, but I'm gonna mash them all together into one long, giant video to just throw on in the background if you'd like. So yeah, by the time that happens, then just make this as accurate as humanly possible. But yeah, aside from that, I've got 34 more pages of script to read, so let's get going. The Infinity M.U.G.E.N team is a group of developers who have been known for creating full games such as Super Marvel vs. Capcom Eternity of Heroes and MegaMan Robot Master Mayhem. There are several very known creators in the M.U.G.E.N community that are part of the Infinity M.U.G.E.N team, including the previously discussed and later discussed Warner. They are still currently active in the community and host their own forum on their website that I'll link in the description. Their full games consist entirely of characters and stages made by members of the team, giving them an exceptionally large amount of content they've personally worked on. The Brazil M.U.G.E.N team is another group of developers who specialize in making M.U.G.E.N full games such as Street Fighter Special Operations and Kirby the Dream Battle. Coincidentally, the founder of the Brazil M.U.G.E.N team, O Illusionista, is also a member of the Infinity M.U.G.E.N team, and the history behind this creator is so insanely deep. He is likely the oldest currently active M.U.G.E.N creator, with contributions dating all the way back to 1999 in DOS M.U.G.E.N, as well as being an official and original beta tester for Fighter Factory and having a hand in the creation of Stage Factory, Palatero, and Z-Char CAD. O Illusionista is pretty much the face of the Brazilian and Portuguese-speaking M.U.G.E.N community, with his role as moderator and later administrator of M.U.G.E.N BR, the largest Portuguese M.U.G.E.N forum, and even being miscredited with the creation of it, who was actually Delete BR. As far as the Brazil M.U.G.E.N team goes, they have made an absolutely massive amount of content, all of which can be found on either their official YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook pages. Their fan games even reach outside of the M.U.G.E.N community, with popular creators like Matt McMuscles doing videos of their work. Character of the Month and Character of the Year are awards given out to various characters for their outstanding quality in both gameplay and presentation. I should clarify, it's not the characters getting the award, it's the creators. It would be kind of funny to give the character an award. That's stupid. Why did I say that? This entry probably refers to the M.U.G.E.N Fighter Guild Awards, as they're seemingly the most popular and well-known awards. However, other communities have their own awards in a similar vein, such as M.U.G.E.N Free-for-All's Character and Stage of the Month Award and the M.U.G.E.N Archive's Talent of the Month Award, which currently hasn't seen a new entry since February 2021. Although I'm not part of these communities as much, I'd assume, like any sort of community-driven awards system, there's plenty of drama surrounding what is getting picked to win, so if any of you have been involved with these communities and know about some of the juicier, spicier details, let me know in the comments. I'd be super interested to hear about it. The M.U.G.E.N Archive has been known for a fair amount of controversies in the past, but one of the most persistent ones is the level of security the site takes to protect itself against DDoS and other attacks. The site has a very strict download limit, both in quantity and file size, for users who have not been properly verified. The verification process is a little convoluted, as the easiest attainable level is gained from being a frequent commenter and forum poster, which only expands your limits rather than removes them, and it's unclear as to exactly how much you need to interact with the site before being given permissions. Being a frequent uploader of content also gives you an expanded permission set, leading to people often uploading large quantity of low effort content in an attempt to gain this account standing. I think the most egregious one that people take issues with is the donor and subscriber tiers, which remove your download limits entirely by basically just paying for it. I definitely understand this complaint, as none of this revenue goes towards the content creators who have their content hosted on the site. However, I can understand how these measures are being taken, considering how many times the site has just been crippled by DDoS attacks, as well as looking at M.U.G.E.N Free-for-All's constant download downtimes from the same issues. Personally, I can't say much as my $7 subscription to the archive is what helps me make these videos possible in the first place, but I do understand where people are coming from about it. Also, as a side note, I pay that $7 subscription a month, and half the time I don't even have donator status. I'll roll up on the site to see what content I need for a video, and all of a sudden I'm back to sad download rates. I'm not trying to slight them, I'm just so confused. TV Tropes is a website dedicated to collecting and listing all the common tropes or cliches in pieces of media. Some people love it, some people hate it, but regardless of opinion, the site is absolutely massive and breaks down almost all media piece by piece, and that includes M.U.G.E.N. Like M.U.G.E.N, TV Tropes has also been around for a very, very long time, and as such, the website's page for M.U.G.E.N has also been around for a very, very long time. The main page offers a nice, succinct look into the history of M.U.G.E.N and its offshoots, and the rest of the page catalogs a huge amount of common themes and devices used by M.U.G.E.N creators. It has several different subpages describing some of the most popular characters, funny or scary moments, and rampant speculation. It's a fun read if you like the kind of content TV Tropes provides. The Everyone Hates series are videos originally created by Judge Spear, specifically the Everyone Hates Homer videos, which showcases M.U.G.E.N matches featuring, well, fairly obviously Warner's Homer Simpson character getting absolutely obliterated by various other characters. Ever since the popularity of the series, many other creators have gone on to create their own Everyone Hates videos, including Homer or any other characters that one might want to see set up against completely hopeless odds. This has been an extremely popular trend in M.U.G.E.N videos for a long time, and I still see people making Everyone Hates videos to this day. I talked about this one actually briefly in the addendum at the beginning. The Cinemassacre M.U.G.E.N video refers to a video on the Cinemassacre channel, home of the Angry Video Game Nerd, in the James and Mike Mondays series where the titular James Rolfe and Mike Matei play through the arcade mode of M.U.G.E.N using a roster of wacky and zany characters, as is the usual for most broad M.U.G.E.N content. This video dropped about 4 years ago as of writing this, and according to the comments, seems to be a lot of people's first interaction with M.U.G.E.N. From what I can tell, this is a cut down version of one of Mike Matei's streams, so if you can track down the VOD, there's probably a ton more content between the two of them. One funny thing I noticed, they're using the Dark Souls life bars, which is like one of my favorites. It doesn't fit aesthetically with like the majority of M.U.G.E.N content, which in a way fits the exact aesthetic that I like in M.U.G.E.N. Sprite Club is another 24/7 random battle Twitch stream of M.U.G.E.N that bills itself as a more open and transparent alternative to SaltyBet. The main difference between the two is that Sprite Club allows people to submit their own characters and stages to be used, unlike SaltyBet where the content is strictly controlled by its owners and operators. There's also a ton of extra features Sprite Club has over SaltyBet, but I'm not well versed enough in either platform to know really what they are. But if you're a longtime viewer of SaltyBet, it might be worth your time to check out this alternative. In my research, they only seem to average around 25 viewers, while SaltyBet currently averages around 300, which is a shame. It should see more people. Anderson Kenya 1 is a M.U.G.E.N YouTuber and community owner who seems to focus mainly on cartoon, Nintendo, Sonic, and YouTube poop characters, and makes mostly 2v2 and 4v4 M.U.G.E.N content. He has been active since 2010 and continues to upload to this day, at least as of a month ago, prior to writing this, which was a while ago. Oh god. Aside from the YouTube channel, he also hosts the AK1 M.U.G.E.N community, a forum and content repository that, while not being the biggest in either respect, still seems to boast a fairly active community. This is totally unrelated, but when searching on Google for Anderson Kenya 1, it gave me the location of an alleged elementary school in Vietnam that has allegedly closed down. All the links on it just lead to the actual Anderson Kenya 1 website, so I'm gonna assume this is some kind of error, but I'd love this to be real. POTS-style authors refers to, very obviously, M.U.G.E.N creators who make characters in the style of Phantom of the Server, or POTS for short. I talked about Phantom of the Server in an earlier tier, but as a quick refresher, he is known for converting characters to the Capcom vs SNK 2 style of gameplay, including adding features to those characters mimicking the game's grooves mechanic, as well as some features from other games like EX moves from Street Fighter 3. There are many creators that attempt to mimic his style of Capcom vs SNK 2 conversion to varying degrees of success. The three creators named in this iceberg specifically are J-Morphman, Karma Chameleon, and Divine Wolf. Starting with J-Morphman, he's known as being one of the most successful authors in creating characters similar to POTS, as well as being a global moderator of the M.U.G.E.N Fighters Guild and creating the M.U.G.E.N All-Stars Fighting Jam screen pack. His focus seems to be around Street Fighter, King of Fighters, and Darkstalkers conversions, similar to POTS himself. Next is Karma Chameleon, also known as Charma Carmeleon, oh god, Karma Charizard, and Susan Sarandon, who is one of the newer authors in this realm, only starting to make their own content as of about 2018. They take a lot of cues directly from J-Morphman, with a similar focus on Street Fighter and King of Fighters conversions, as well as some Samurai Showdown characters. However, utilizing more data from newer games in the characters' respective series where applicable. They are also known for their very high quality work, and while being closer to J-Morphman's style directly than POTS, their characters are still excellent. Finally, there's Divine Wolf, who is known for not only Street Fighter and King of Fighters characters, as seen with the other two, but also Marvel vs. Capcom character conversions such as Psylocke, Jill Valentine, and Strider Hiryu. Personally, what he's most well known for to me is his conversion of Kung Fu Girl, a gender-swapped version of Kung Fu Man, and the actual man himself, Kung Fu Man. Both of them have that same Capcom vs. SNK2 style and play extremely well, with his version of KFM being one of my preferred versions of that character. Omsby is a M.U.G.E.N creator mainly known for the characters based around the BlazBlue series, specifically BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, featuring many mechanics converted directly from that game. They've also made characters from many other series in the same style, notably Super Smash Bros., Blade Strangers, and Melty Blood, among a few others. Recently, they have begun to add more custom mechanics to their newer characters, such as the comeback system called Not Over Yet that gives a stat boost at low health, and the Ultra Burst that functions like a normal burst while also boosting the character's attack and giving them health regen for a short time. Behaving similarly to Sparking in Dragon Ball FighterZ, highlighting my limited frame of reference for these kind of things. I've talked about this creator a few times in the previous tier, so I'm very surprised his creations have ended up higher on the iceberg than the man himself. Warner is a creator known extremely well specifically for his Simpsons and Family Guy creations, which I've talked about previously. However, he's created many characters from other series, including other popular Western cartoons, Fantastic Four, Macaroni Kenshin, and Super Smash Bros. Warner's characters typically will have compatibility with each other in the form of special intros or unique interactions with certain moves, as well as compatibility with many Mortal Kombat character finishers and the, let's say, more NSFW interactions like Dimitri's Midnight Bliss, which is the least egregious example I can think of. Warner was also a member of Team SMRT, along with King Shadow 3 and previous topic of the Iceberg Judge Spear, where the three of them released enhanced versions of Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson, among many others before Judge Spear's retirement from M.U.G.E.N. Jet Goshi, who has gone by Cyber Lizard and Canny Fan previously, is a M.U.G.E.N creator known for originally making sprite swaps of Pokemon characters, but has since evolved into a full-fledged original content creator. Known specifically for his OC, formerly Cyber Yoshi, which was a heavily edited version of Claymizer's Blaziken, though having since been re-released as Jet Goshi proper, a fully original creation that plays like a Marvel vs. Capcom Eternity of Heroes type character, retaining very little of his copyrighted green dinosaur origins. Other characters he's known for are his early versions of Gallade and Garchomp, sprite edits of Claymizer's Blaziken and Shazo's Giga Bowser, respectively. Rayquaza, who was originally another sprite swap of Shazo's Giga Bowser, but was re-released as an original boss character, and Skeptile, who he worked on with Delanius 9000, which has some great gameplay and unique mechanics. N64 Mario, also known as N Mario, N Mario 64, or GCN Mario, is an extremely decorated and currently active M.U.G.E.N content creator known for some extremely high quality work. He is mostly known for making characters based around the Super Mario, obviously, MegaMan, and Street Fighter series, and has made some of the most original and creative characters seen in M.U.G.E.N. Some examples of this being Castle Calamity, a character based on the Newgrounds Flash animation of the same name, where Mario attempts but fails to destroy the castle seen at the end of each world in Super Mario World. Cursor, a character based on the Windows mouse cursor that flies around the screen clicking and using various Windows functions as attacks. Killer Whale, a boss character based on its appearance in Metal Slug 2 that was originally an OHKO cheap character but has since become a feature-complete boss character. Metool, an old favorite of mine that has the ability to block all incoming damage just like its source material and has some fun assists. As well as Sandbag, who we discussed earlier. He also created a large amount of stages and coded the capability for screen packs to support 250, 256, and 358 character slots respectively, respectively, which was very impressive for the time before the creation of like 1,000+ character screen packs. He's done some work outside of M.U.G.E.N as well, including engines for building fan games based on the NES Mega Man series, the Game Boy Mega Man series, and Zelda 2. Hey, look, another creator whose work has preceded them on this very iceberg. The Nun, formerly known as Most Mysterious, is probably one of the most well-known M.U.G.E.N creators, at least during the 2000s era of the community. I've talked about two of his most well-known characters previously, being Omega Tiger Woods, Clippy, and Gygus. That was 3. I don't know why I can't count. However, he has a massive catalog of content he's created from 2004 all the way to his last release in 2021. Other well-known characters he's released are Dink Smallwood, an MS Paint style redraw of the title character of the game Dink Smallwood. I can't get over that title. Doobie Dummy, a character in a similar style from the game Pencil Whipped. Dopefish, who is practically a Poji and id Software's unofficial mascot, drawn by the game designer Tom Hall simply as a stupid fish before fans latched onto it. And a version of Marvel superheroes Thanos, complete with some gags and the Thug Shaker as a victory animation. Special mention to his Missing No character, which is one of the most visually creative and fun iterations of that character. Otherwise, he has a website, Logical Bends, which he runs with AOK Maniac 13, that hosts all of his content, among other things, and a YouTube channel at The No, which is mostly memes and some oddly self-reflective shitposting. Electbyte's whereabouts refers to just that. Where the hell is Electbyte now? Aside from the last tweet in 2016 promoting Rotten Core that I mentioned in the first part, there has been almost complete radio silence from the group. Many wannabe internet sleuths have attempted to dig up any kind of information on them, as we don't even know the names of the developers involved, but with little gained aside from knowing that they are indeed an American company based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and founded in 1998. The fact that they've been able to keep their identities hidden this whole time and just drop off the face of the earth like they did is incredibly bizarre. There's an article on Super Combo that details one journalist's attempt at discovering more information on the group that led to some more minor information, such as the original Allegro license for the game's library was registered to someone only known as Sean, and that there seem to be 3 people comprising Electbyte as a whole, with 2 pseudonyms that may be associated with them being Akido and Geki. This article is an extremely interesting tale of following leads that lead to other leads, and is absolutely worth reading yourself, and the author brings up an excellent point. Perhaps all this sleuthing is not what members of Electbyte want. Their disappearance is obviously intentional, and with the time that has since passed, maybe it's just more respectful to let this mystery lie and leave them to continue their lives in whatever way they've chosen. Melty Blood M.U.G.E.N refers to the myriad of content made based on the Melty Blood series, fighting games made by Type Moon, developers known for their visual novel and romance games, specifically known for the Fate games such as Fate Stay Night and licensing Fate Grand Order, as well as the Tsukihime series, which Melty Blood is apparently canonical to. The most recent Melty Blood, Type Lumina, specifically features various characters from across Type Moon's catalog, making it extremely popular not only with fighting game fans, as it's apparently one of the better competitive anime fighters and has a wide selection of platforms released on, but fans of Tsukihime and Fate and other Type Moon properties as well. Apart from just the straight ports of characters, there's also a ton of Melty Blood edits in the usual fare of M.U.G.E.N edits like cheap versions, style conversions, and even other Type Moon characters that fit the theme. And because I'll never get a chance to talk about this again, I want to bring up the Melty Blood poverty esports scene, where because the games were never big enough to take main stage or really any stage at events, at least before Type Lumina, players would resort to running sets in the most unorthodox places such as bathrooms, cafeterias, or even hotel bathtubs, leading to some of the funniest pictures I've ever seen out of the FGC. TMNTXJL, an abbreviation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cross Justice League, is an extremely popular fan game created in Ikemen by the living legend and certified M.U.G.E.N old head Kamikaze. As the title suggests, it's a crossover fighter featuring characters from both the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe and the Justice League universe. Aside from the famed Kamikaze, there are also many other extremely notable names involved in this project, including former SNK employees Nona, Tate Norio, Yama P1, and Haya, as well as A What's Going On and LE Eli on the graphics team. That was a lot of names, and if I butchered any of them, I'm really sorry. The game itself has a few notable mechanics, such as an extra meter system called Omega, gained in specific situations that unlocks new specials similar to EX moves, a tag system, and the ability to gain health from blocking after tagging out. There's an excellent article written by Gens of Super Combo, I'll link in the description, that goes into tremendous detail about the game, including interviews with some of the developers. But if you're a fan of either Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Justice League, or just good-ass fighting games, you should check this out. Card Saga's Wars, which is a weird title to say now that I'm actually speaking it, was a M.U.G.E.N full game made in the original M.U.G.E.N engine that received a large amount of attention both within and outside the M.U.G.E.N community for its unique gameplay and an absolutely bonkers roster. To start with the roster, it features characters such as Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, MegaMan X, Link, Samus, and Master Chief, among many other crazy picks, keeping in the spirit of the straight-up wild crossover potential of M.U.G.E.N. As for the gameplay, it's a 5-button fighter with one for normal attacks, one for special attacks, one to activate each character's green card, one for their crisis card, and finally one for a unique skill. Moves are decided based on what direction the player is holding, and the game's hypers, known as alpha, beta, and alpha beta combos, are performed using quarter circle and half circle motions. Card Saga's Wars ceased development after its most recent release, Prototype 2 in 2018, but has been succeeded by an unofficial Ikemen port, Card Saga Wars Online, which was originally created to allow for online play and include the other Ikemen only features, but has now become the main Card Saga War release after receiving endorsement from the original developers, as well as them having a hand in the original port for the net play purpose, with balance changes and bug fixes differentiating it from the final 2018 release. Also, I'm very confused because I have Card Saga's Wars and Card Saga Wars written in here interchangeably, and I just quickly fact checked that to look it up, and it seems like it is also used interchangeably. Their website is Card Saga War, but the banner says Card Saga's War. I don't know. You'll find it. If you look for it, you'll find it. Battle Craze is another M.U.G.E.N full game project running in Ikemen Go, featuring a wholly original cast of characters, including some guest appearances from other projects like Knuckle Busters and Sorceress Stories, and a few unique systems such as the Craze technique, a unique ability to each character that complements their moveset, perfect guarding, a maneuver called Heartbreaker to get you out of block stun, and Craze canceling that lets you burn meter for extra movement and neutral options. Battle Craze is currently in development, with its most recent update being in May of 2023. Not much more to say here, it's just really polished and a super stylish indie fighting game that everyone should check out. Also, shout out to this guy who commented just to tell me to play Battle Craze. I hope you're happy. Babel Sword is the final M.U.G.E.N full game that we'll be talking about today. It's a blend of both fighting games and shmups, apparently playing similar to Sanko no Ronde, or Suguri, which I have never heard of until now. Personally, it feels more like a 2D Gundam Versus game, which I have played, specifically the Boot Fighter Wyndham games. How come nobody ever talks about those? With a blend of ranged shooting and melee combating, allowing for more in-depth combat at any distance. The characters also feature the ability to fly, dash, form barriers, and even have a universal buff system once their saturation gauge fills, causing them to increase one stat chosen prior to activation. Originally released using WinMu.G.E.N, later being updated to 1.1 beta, the mainline version of the game has since ceased updating as of 2018. However, the game has since had a reboot using the Ikemen Plus engine as of 2020, allowing for greater freedom in features and netplay, as seen with pretty much every other M.U.G.E.N full game ported to Ikemen we've seen so far. DOS M.U.G.E.N was the earliest release of M.U.G.E.N created by Elecbyte for, obviously, MS-DOS systems. Much of what we saw in WinMu.G.E.N was already fully implemented in DOS M.U.G.E.N, with many minor differences that we kind of take for granted now. For example, characters were limited to 256 colors, which sounds like a lot, but is actually severely limiting for high-res characters, as well as characters not able to have additional palettes. In fact, you weren't able to use any unshared sprites, so custom hit sparks and similar effects were nearly impossible. Other weird and wacky differences, like less options in fight.dev and system.dev, health bars visually scaling very oddly when using abnormal values, blocking behaving slightly differently, and native rumble support for PlayStation 1 controllers plugged in via parallel port. There was a time, similarly to when M.U.G.E.N 1.0 was released, where many people were very hesitant to make the switch to WinMu.G.E.N, just as they were to switch from WinMu.G.E.N, and there exists a ton of content that either originated from DOS M.U.G.E.N or was never properly ported to newer releases, including some full games. DOS M.U.G.E.N seems like a giant pain to run on any modern system, with issues of file name length causing crashes, file sizes causing crashes, and incompatibilities unless you're running a DOS protected mode interface executable. And I'm not going to pretend like I know what that means. The W.E.N No Limit patch was a hacked release of W.E.N made by Rowdy that unlocked all features within the original release of W.E.N. When first introduced, W.E.N was only released as a demo, with most features stripped from it, a 2-character limit, and a hard time limit of 10 minutes before the game would just shut down. 2 years after the first release of the demo, and a year after Electbyte first closed their website, Rowdy chose to release this hacked version with the assumption that Electbyte wouldn't return to release the full version. This version removes the character limit, technically still limited to 65,535 characters, but that is unreasonable to ever hit, especially considering how early this was in the M.U.G.E.N community. Removes the time limit and nag screens, informing the user the software is a demo. Allows access to the disabled game modes, and fixes a massive suite of bugs. Eventually, Electbyte would return to release W.E.N in its complete form officially, but for a few years the No Limit patch was effectively the way to play M.U.G.E.N, and the community would not be where it is today without Rowdy. The 3v3 and 4v4 patches are modifications for M.U.G.E.N 1.0 and 1.1 made by Not a Good Name that allows fairly self-explanatory 3v3 or 4v4 matches in simultaneous mode. It is as absolutely chaotic as you'd expect out of seeing 8 characters fight simultaneously. The mod can pretty much only be used in watch mode, as when attempting to play it yourself, each of the characters on your side are all controlled by the same button inputs, making it nearly impossible to do like anything of value. There exists debug keys to take control of a single character and have 3 AI controlled, as well as separate executables for M.U.G.E.N 1.1 that allow this by default in arcade and survival, which is definitely the most functional way to play this. Just like in traditional simultaneous mode, the power meter is shared between the characters, making supers happen a lot. There's a couple of other limitations in this mode, the big one being that many low-end computers really can't handle 4 characters at once, especially back when this was released in 2013, and will severely lag or outright crash when trying to use this. There's also the problem that due to life bar limitations, only the first 2 characters' life is displayed. The other 2 characters have working health, you just can't see it. This mod is mostly used for M.U.G.E.N AI versus videos due to the aforementioned unplayability of it in most cases, and just how chaotic these fights can be. You really have to pick the proper characters to actually craft something even watchable, unless chaos is what you're going for, in which case more power to you. Add 004 is another mod, this time made by Shio Kakuge, that adds a bunch of extra features to M.U.G.E.N. The main one of note is the tag system. It overrides the existing implementation of simultaneous mode and allows you to select another character to switch in and out of, as well as summon them for assists, just like really any other tag fighter. The mod comes with custom life bars to properly display the UI elements necessary for this feature, as well as other features I'll talk about in just a second. And there are other versions of this mod that provide different options for these life bars, as well as the option to remove another added feature being guard breaking. Characters are given a set amount of guard health, meaning they cannot block indefinitely, which is useful especially against some of the much higher level AI that love to block nearly everything you throw out. The other feature it adds is the parry function, which comes in 2 flavors, blue parry and red parry. These are based on a new meter system added by the mod, with blue parries functioning as the standard high risk high reward defensive option when you have maximum blue meter, while the red parry is only accessible with 50% or higher red meter that slightly heals you and opens up hyper combo routes. I have no idea how this is so low on these icebergs, but here it is. vSelect is a program made by Tongue Lasher, compatible with all versions from W.E.N onward, that give you a graphical user interface to add, move, and reorganize your M.U.G.E.N characters, as well as redefine their arcade mode places and easily enable and disable installed stages. Prior to the invention of vSelect, we had to manually edit our select.def files in the text editor and carefully work around the line breaks and boundaries to keep everything looking correct, and we'd have to constantly go back and forth between like Notepad and opening M.U.G.E.N to make sure things didn't just blow up. It was miserable, and I would very much like to never go back to that. I only learned about vSelect because of starting this Iceberg and getting back into M.U.G.E.N after all these years, and it has been an absolute godsend, especially with how much I have to record and constantly installing new content to get the most interesting and relevant matches for these videos. There are some bugs and limitations with vSelect, but I'll take any and all of them before having to go back to setting up my select.defs manually, like, ever. Vanilla Ikemen may be referring to the original release of Ikemen prior to its ceasing development and the forked projects taking over. For a quick refresher, Ikemen is a completely open source fighting game engine compatible with most content made for M.U.G.E.N. Its 2 biggest features being online play and an open publishing license allowing you to sell games made using it. The earliest release of Ikemen that we know about was on July 7, 2010 and had very few features aside from online matches and a replay function. All versions of Ikemen prior to Ikemen Go were written in a language called S-Size, which was a language created by by the developer of Ikemen themselves, Super Suhiro, before switching to Go, hence the name Ikemen Go, in 2016. Go is a programming language created by Google and is significantly easier to work with than a self-made language, leading to multiple collaborators and forks of the Ikemen Go project, eventually culminating into the various versions of Ikemen we have today. I've touched on this briefly with the entry for Brutal AI in the previous tier. AI edits and patches are additional content created for existing characters, which either adds AI to characters that were previously using the default M.U.G.E.N AI, which, as I've stated before, is not great at handling most characters' movesets, can't really combo, and will not interact with custom mechanics unless by accident, or edit an existing AI to either fix bugs, generally play better, or make it significantly more difficult. Case in point, Brutal AI, which was discussed previously. These kind of things are very important, not only to just making a more interesting gameplay experience in your M.U.G.E.N installation, but also for those of us who make heavy use of the watch mode. Before working on these videos, I never really considered how important AI patches were, but after seeing my 100th match of interesting characters straight up fumble rounds because the Kung Fu Man AI has no idea what to do with the character, I really did see the light. Cancelled or unfinished characters is pretty self-explanatory. Characters who were either released as WIPs or work-in-progress characters, but never completed, or announced by their creator and just never released at all. In many cases, if the character was popular enough, another creator might take it upon themselves to either finish up a whip or make their own character in the vision of the original announcement, should a character be formally cancelled, or simply if they're just really impatient for updates. Many unfinished or work-in-progress characters you can usually find are actually fully functional, but may just be missing features such as palettes, auxiliary animations like outros, or custom AI, which is often remedied by other creators. This is another entry I've touched on in a roundabout kind of way, but never talked about by itself. Character-specific intros and quotes refer to custom assets present when a character faces another specific character that calls for those assets. An example of this I've talked about before is the intro between Kashio's Donald McDonald and Peg's Colonel Sanders, where Sanders will cut down a cardboard standee of Ronald before the fight begins, or Team SMRT's Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin having a custom intro with each other where Homer kicks an unaware Peter right in the ass before beginning the battle. This kind of thing is very common in retail fighting games, specifically between characters that interact in lore. However, in M.U.G.E.N, this is much less common as there are like a million different characters and usually only have custom intros for characters by the same creator or against extremely popular characters, such as Team Z2's Vegeta and M. Bison from Street Fighter, and Team SMRT's Peter Griffin with Morgana from Darkstalkers. Character-specific quotes are in the same kind of boat, usually just a blurb during the victory screen present if a winning character has specific dialogue against the character they just beat. However, this seems even less common as many characters won't even have custom win quotes to begin with. Another topic I've partially discussed before, special character palettes are when a character will have some sort of special function assigned to whatever palette is selected. I previously talked about 12p mode, a special form some characters have on their 12 palette that when selected makes them anywhere from significantly stronger to completely invincible, but that is ironically the tip of the iceberg when it comes to special palettes. There exist many all-in-one characters that have almost completely different forms on each palette, as well as some characters with transformations instantly going into these forms on each palette, such as 280 Go's Son Goku being able to pick any form from Super Saiyan to Ultra Instinct based on palette. I'm kind of shocked this one's on here at all, let alone at tier 3, but alas, it is here and I need to talk about it. Misaligned hitboxes are exactly what they sound like, poorly coded hitboxes for a character's attack that don't properly reflect the actual sprite or animation used. As a refresher for anyone who needs it, a hitbox is part of the code that specifies the physical space of the attack animation that actually lands the hit, formed in a box around whatever the attack is, whether it's a fist of a jab or the body of a projectile. Hitboxes have to be carefully considered when designing a character. Too small and they won't work the way the player expects, making the move significantly worse. Too large and the move hits way outside the range it appears, and in some cases beyond even the character's normal reach. Misaligned hitboxes specifically are almost like a global problem with some characters' hitboxes where the values of all of their hitboxes are incorrectly set in a way that none of them reflect the actual sprites whatsoever. This is usually caused by lack of testing before release, or just a very inexperienced creator. Simply misattributing an X or Y axis on a character's hitboxes can have disastrous consequences for the entire character's performance. OC characters are fairly self-explanatory if you know what an OC is. OC refers to original character, which in this context can have two meanings. In fandom, OCs are usually a character created by somebody based on a piece of media to fit into said media. Think all those Sonic OCs you've probably seen a million times in your life. However, OC can also refer to wholly original characters created by somebody for a purpose either within their own work or personal fiction or solely just because they think it's cool. A good example of this is the work of a creator who we previously looked at, Jet Goshi. Originally his OC, known as Cyber Yoshi, fell into that first category, being an anthropomorphized, I hate that word, punk rock style Yoshi from the Super Mario series with the ability to transform into a Charizard. As time went on, he became his own unique entity, Jet Goshi, who is now just a regular punk rock lizard man without any ties to his former egg-laying dinosaur form, although he can still transform into a Charizard, I guess, I don't know. Many OC characters will also fall under the amateur/child art category, as a majority of these creations are done by young, inexperienced, or even first-time character creators. Some characters we previously looked at, like Daniel, or even Electbyte's own characters, Kung Fu Man and Suave Dude, qualify as OCs as well. Punching bag characters are characters that are programmed with no AI, used specifically as a non-enemy to freely combo off as you feel appropriate. The most popular punching bag character is N64 Mario's Sandbag, who functions just like its original iteration in Super Smash Bros. As a static entity existing solely to have the absolute shit kicked out of it. Where this gets weird is the reason some of these characters exist. With Sandbag, it makes sense. It's based on an existing character that absolutely functions just like a punching bag. That's always been its purpose. However, some creators take it upon themselves to make punching bags out of, like, other things. The tamest examples are punching bags based off things the creator particularly doesn't like. Some examples I've seen include the creator's internet router, a can of green beans, and the 4Kids logo. That one takes me back to the juicy mid-2000s YouTube days. These examples aren't all too weird, usually just kids venting whatever frustration they have using some limited knowledge of M.U.G.E.N creation. No, the weird part is the punching bags based on, like, personal beef. Many characters you can find on, for example, the M.U.G.E.N Archives Punching Bag Characters tab features OCs or representations of their personal relations. Some friends they had a falling out with, or someone else on the site that said something mean to them. They'll take that person's character or even just their profile picture and make a punching bag character to, like, prove a point or something. This is like the slightly more advanced version of printing out someone's picture and, like, putting it up on your dartboard, or, like, taping it to your punching bag maybe is more appropriate. I've seen some comments on there where people were really hurt or even concerned that these characters were being made of them. In some way I understand. I was also once a small child with a little too much internet access and some very pointless arguments with people in my group. Completely unrelated aside, my group used to make slightly mean-spirited YouTube poop, like, diss tracks at each other if we had a problem, and you can imagine how good, like, a 10-year-old's YTP beef was. Not great. Symbiote edits are edits of existing characters that give them the appearance of a symbiote parasite from the Spider-Man series, specifically with a black and white palette, perhaps an evil-looking face, pitched down sounds, and often a significant increase to their stats. Symbiote edits can range from an extremely basic palette swap to an exceedingly cheap version of the character. However, many of these edits find themselves under the amateur/child art designation due to the ease in which they're created and the sheer amount of them being created by young or inexperienced creators. This is an example of prefixed characters, which I don't believe has its own entry, so I'll talk about them here too. Prefix characters are edits of characters given a specific prefix related to what has actually been modified on their character. We've seen a few examples of these before, such as Orochi, Omega, or Dark characters. Typically, prefix characters all share the same trait of massively inflated stats from their original counterparts, as well as a consistent aesthetic theme associated with their prefix. Prefix characters are actually present in commercial fighting games as well, such as Evil Ryu and Shin Akuma from the Street Fighter series, or the Orochi and Omega character designations from the King of Fighters series. Stupa's training is a quote-unquote character made by the creator Stupa, obviously, that acts as an advanced in-game character debugger. The character functions akin to fighting an opponent in training mode with constantly refilling life. However, when put in a normal match, this does use the basic M.U.G.E.N AI, causing it to use random moves when selected. This poses an issue due to the fact that none of this character's buttons are actual attacks or even things a character should normally do. The buttons on this character activate certain effects like displaying a grid on screen, pausing the battle and displaying frame data or distance on a character's attack, generating test attacks and projectiles that do 0 damage, or displaying a character's head and body positions. The character itself comes in 4 flavors for testing various opponent sizes: Kung Fu Man for the standard character size, a Prinny from Disgaea for the small characters, Tenchi Hinanawi from Toho for the wider characters, and Hugo from Street Fighter 3 for the largest size. I've talked about this guy before in other contexts, but not specifically on his own. Omega Tiger Woods is a character created by the Nun under his former alias Most Mysterious. He consists of a huge grayscale image of famous professional golfer Tiger Woods' head, with his mouth edited to resemble the Nike logo and a crude MS Paint style body. Originally designed in 2005 as a funny joke character with pitched up voice clips and random memes in his attack, the 2012 release sees a darker and more disturbing version of him due to the Nun's struggle with creating Gygas at the time, who we've discussed before. Back during his original release, he was known as possibly one of the cheapest characters to ever exist, however that title has long been lost. Even so, he'll still handle most legitimate characters, especially due to his absurd AI that is adept at spamming projectiles, which to be fair make up like 90% of his moveset. He only uses 3 buttons, the majority consisting of some form of projectile with the exception of his 2 command specials: Man Dies Jumping on His Head and Man Dies Jumping from the Bridge. You see what I mean about it being a little darker than usual. Those moves create low earthquake type effects, as well as his other non-projectile move, Mike Dawson's Greatest Hits, which was also introduced in his 2012 update and also shows. He begins speaking, however his head explodes mid-sentence, causing him to run away and grab a new one off screen. If the opponent is caught in the explosion, he attempts to use the character as a new head before it is rejected, causing massive damage. Ironically, Omega Tom Hanks was covered earlier in the Iceberg, despite itself being a direct reference to Omega Tiger Woods. Primeus is a character created by well-known author Rice Pigeon, known primarily for the full game Touhou Gensokyo Reloaded, and like 500,000 Touhou characters among some other series. Primeus was originally released in 2009 as a bait-and-switch character, announced as a Super Smash Bros. Style version of the Touhou character Yukari Yakumo, before being very clearly not that. Visually, Primeus is a large rainbow trout that gently bobs up and down and crudely flaps its mouth. It cannot move save for a body slam attack that always positions it towards its opponent, and otherwise its moveset consists of shooting missiles and cuckoos from its mouth and summoning various assists. These assists are based on characters typically considered low quality at the time, including Actarius' Peter Griffin, Xenon Pivot's Kung Fu Mario, Deshiznit's Lucario, Mugen JF's SpongeBob SquarePants, Death by Spoon's 300 guy, Golthor's Sephiroth, and previous topic of this video, Jet Goshi's Cyber Yoshi. Fittingly, it also has an OHKO super, its only super, once its meter reaches 9001 power, where it calls forth an ancient meme and uses a screen-wide beam attack for an instant kill if it hits. I swear, doing this Iceberg is like it's like a time capsule of early internet. It's so funny. It gives me whiplash every time I see something like that. It's also functionally a boss character with a massive amount of life and super armor preventing most combos. However, oddly, it still receives hit stun from attacks. Nowadays, this character is seen as like mildly offensive, with its attack names being not super great, the joke about it being a gay fish, and making fun of a lot of amateur M.U.G.E.N creators' works. I've talked about the Nun's Gygas at length during the last part, so I don't think I need to go into tremendous detail here. This entry is specifically referring to Gygas' windscreen animations. These windscreens are all meant to be creepy or unnerving at best, and just straight up jump scares at worst. Most features have some known creepypasta image, or images that appear in Gygas' second phase attacks. However, there's a few unique clips that are either created by the Nun himself or pulled from some obscure media. One very well-known win animation references the YouTube poop That One Thing Rung Tree by Ophios, which itself is a pretty spooky video in a goofy way, and I'll link to that in the description. I'll also link to Lucas345's compilation of Gygas win animations as well if you want to see them all together. Although once again, fair warning, at least half of them are jump scares, or screamers to use era-appropriate terminology. I think my favorite animation is the one featuring the Nun himself glitchily coming out of a door wearing a piece of paper with Jeff the Killer on it, saying, "This isn't really scary, but this is," and then opening a copy of Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King and jump scaring the player with that one picture from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's just delightfully chaotic. This is another one that probably should have been covered in a previous tier, considering I've already talked about these in a roundabout kind of way for the entries for Nuke Method and the character F1. OHKO characters are pretty self-explanatory, characters that will cause an instant knockout against their opponent. This is typically referring to characters whose only move is an OHKO attack, not simply a character who possesses an OHKO attack, although this can sometimes overlap in characters such as Omega Tom Hanks that are functionally OHKO characters anyway. These characters will typically be fully invincible and activate their attack on the first frame they're able. However, in some instances, they may need to charge meter first or have an aesthetic delay to build tension before the attack. The attack itself is traditionally either a move that deals an absurd amount of damage or directly sets the opponent's life to 0. Later, we'll be talking about some more examples of OHKO characters, as well as specific functions that allow them to OHKO characters that don't abide by normal rules of the game, such as infinite life totals or F1 immunity. Okay, now this next one's a long one, so bear with me. This is where we start getting down one of the rabbit holes I discussed earlier. Cheapies refers to a character that goes above and beyond the standard category for cheap characters, being cheap to the point of falling outside the realm of traditional Mugen mechanics. These characters will abuse quirks or bugs in the code of Mugen to force a win condition regardless of any kind of life total manipulation or F1 protection. However, at the most basic level, cheapies will utilize the nuke method to instantly knock out their opponent, although generally using higher level tricks with it, like helper code, to change the opponent's hit state and life totals directly, differentiating them from the standard OHKO character. Generally, cheapies will be designed to defeat other cheapies whilst having protection against mechanics used by cheapies before them, leading to a cascade of power levels where people constantly try to one-up each other. I think I have to do my due diligence here and also talk about how controversial the name cheapie actually is. It's seemingly been retroactively adopted by people to differentiate traditional cheap characters and characters who ascend even that standard of bullshit. However, there are many people originally in the cheap character community who have pushed back on that, stating it's a term they've never used and will never use going forward. I can't really weigh in on this myself. My time spent in the Mugen community was well before these characters were commonplace, and the general cheap character power seemed to cap around Chuck Norris, which definitely dates me heavily. Don't think about it. My advice to you, if you're interested in this aspect of the Mugen character development, is to do some research and talk to people in the community about what this all is really about. It's very easy to get lost in the weeds revolving around discussions from people who have only skimmed the surface of this topic like I have. And as we get further down the iceberg, there'll definitely be examples of that. Iceberg creator and friend of the channel Koi, as well as King Demonic 666 and Donaldo Magic, are extremely knowledgeable on the topic of cheap characters and have spent a long time in the community, so they would be far more appropriate to speak on this. There is also a Google Doc sent to me by Koi, created by Nomi, who is also a well-known cheap character developer, that breaks down the general power level for each character type and has some good examples of characters who fall under each tier. Null and Void tier cheapies are the first two tiers of cheap characters, directly above those who OHKO using just the nuke method or similar strategies. Null cheapies in particular use engine exploits, specifically the %n bug, to directly modify the opponent's controller, typically changing their var set controller to a null controller, allowing the character to then directly modify their alive state, causing an instant knockout. The Void tier method similarly uses an exploit in the overflow to the assert to clipboard and display to clipboard values to instantly knock out their opponent. As is the way with these kind of rankings, null tiers are typically able to defeat nuke tier, while void tiers are capable of defeating both previous tiers. And as you climb higher in the rankings, most characters will have either built-in protection against these type of functions, or the ability to just defeat the opponent before these kind of things can even activate. Once again, I don't know a whole lot or really anything about the way Mugen's code works, and this information is largely taken from the Mugen database with some additional research from other creators. So take everything with a grain of salt and look into these concepts yourself if you're interested in the creation of cheap Mugen characters. This is what I was referring to before about getting more into the code of Mugen, and this is so far out of my wheelhouse. I'm trying to parse it down in a more understandable way, but a lot of it is just talking about specific controllers and handlers in a character. So if you're at all adept with any sort of programming, this will be more value to you to actually research this yourself. I've discussed A-Bomb briefly in the last video's entry on the nuke method, but here's a more comprehensive entry. A-Bomb was created by Iron Commando using the original nuke method's code created by MapeLao, who originally used it in their character Death Star under the name Troy. A-Bomb is largely considered to be Mugen's first cheapie, as the nuke method was able to pretty consistently knock out anything short of having F1 immunity, unless sparking the controversial named Cheapie War. Again, that's another title that is consistently argued for and against in the community. Regardless of the title, this is what I was referring to by the cascade cascading power levels in cheap characters caused by the rapid one-upping of every new top dog in the cheap character community. A-Bomb, however, was not the first character to use this method, with that honor going to MapleLao's own second Death Star. However, that character had remained private during the release of A-Bomb, making this the first character people had truly open access with the function, as well as being able to KO the second Death Star itself, making it pull slightly ahead in general strength. Since the rise of more methods for instant KOs, A-Bomb has become rather pedestrian in the cheap community. However, edits have been made to try and pull it in line with some of the fresher competition, such as Samsara 01's A-Bomb Mark II, which uses the null state controller to allow for knockouts against tougher opponents. Second Death Star, as I literally just discussed, was created by MapleLao under the name Troy and is now considered to be the first cheapie, although not released publicly at first, formally giving that title up to A-Bomb. Having F1 immunity but not being immune to the nuke method, it is slightly weaker than the cheap characters in its tier, but it's notable for being the first use of the nuke method, and although unconfirmed, it's likely that method itself was originally discovered by MapleLao. There's not a whole lot more to say about this one, but I can discuss the other Death Stars MapleLao has released since then. The first Death Star, known simply as Death Star, was a traditional OHKO character that did not use any sort of fancy code to bypass any protections, and simply used a massive damage full screen hitbox to knock out legitimate characters, and had no active hurt box allowing it to be functionally invincible against said legitimate characters. The third Death Star, on the other hand, known as Third Death Star, very creative, is an edited version of Second Death Star that, while no longer featuring any sort of OHKO ability, has the F1 protection and can tag multiple forms of OHKO attacks itself while spamming projectiles like crazy. Okay, I had to make sure I did this entry justice or else Koi is going to straight up kill me, so this one's also a long one. Crazy Catastrophe, released by Okihito, is an edit of Mizuchi, a clone of the character Orochi who appears in the game Neo Geo Battle Coliseum that I discussed in the bonus entries / corrections of this video. Both Mizuchi and Orochi are popular targets for cheap edits, but Crazy Catastrophe is by far the most popular of them all. Not only himself, but edits of him as well, to further increase his absurd power level. Crazy Catastrophe was one of the first null characters created, and at the time was seen as completely unbeatable, with numerous OHKO moves able to take out the likes of previously thought to be invincible cheap characters such as Devil's Eye and Haster. Ironically, another Orochi edit created by MapleLao. Not to be confused with MapleLao, don't even think about getting them confused. The true power of Crazy Catastrophe comes from his 11p and 12p palette modes. The 11p mode progressively scales up the difficulty of the fight, with different aesthetic changes to the background until either the 7th event, where the opponent is OHKO'd, or something else, which I apparently didn't write in the script. Sorry about that. This progression will continue to the 7th event regardless of if the match has been concluded by victory, defeat, or timeout. If by some miracle the opponent has survived the 7th event and defeated Crazy Catastrophe, usually through a forced time over or some kind of advanced win condition, 11p mode takes a completely different form for round 2, where the BGM becomes pitched down and ominous, the first round of attacks become more aggressive, and should the opponent survive that onslaught, the screen blacks out and the match is forcibly ended in a draw. The 12p mode, on the other hand, is what you'd expect from a traditional cheap character, with no sort of fancy progression mechanics and simply possessing the raw power and absurd code manipulation capable of taking out a huge amount of established cheap characters, in the form of an attack known as Cremination Blast. Since his release, Crazy Catastrophe has been updated in an attempt to keep up with the new developments in cheap character technology, as well as many edits such as Dark Archangel and Overkill, to name a couple. Also, just for the record, Crazy Catastrophe is such a hard name to say. I think I had to retake this like every single time his name came up in the script. It's a cool name, but I just wish it was something easier just for this sake. Bloody Flander is an extremely powerful and formerly rare cheap character created by Michael Armaros. God, I hope I pronounced that right. That one took me a while to read. She's an edit of the Toho character Flander Scarlet and is capable of even taking out null characters, which made her one of the most powerful cheap characters of her time. Her moveset revolves around a theme of blood and gore and demonic imagery as she brutalizes her opponent in various ways. Aside from all of that, she's also known for having 11p and 12p modes that change her from a seemingly normal yet powerful character to a raw insta-kill machine where she lives up to her cheap title. In these forms, she has access to a special simply known as 666, which plays the Song of Unhealing, a reversed version of the Song of Healing from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which then causes a jump scare and insta-kills the opponent. For the record, I have yet to find footage of that actual move, and I'm very interested to see what it actually looks like. There's also a counterpart to this character named Holy Flander. While not being made by the same creator, is another incredibly cheap edit of Flander Scarlet that is capable of winning against Bloody Flander, and many YouTube videos feature fights against them. Angle Draw Sphere, also known simply as ADS or AXAYAZSSS, is a character created by PKRS, which I think is pronounced Pokerus, if that is indeed the reference, that is both a proof of concept character showcasing the capabilities of the engine, as well as an absolute monster capable of taking out nuke tier cheapies, as well as being known as the first character capable of defeating A-Bomb. It's a small black sphere with a cavity in the center and 2 small orbs orbiting it. One big feature of ADS is the ability to track the opponent using the small crater on its body, showcasing the ability for characters to change the angle of origin of their projectiles based on the location of their opponents. It can also change the direction of its projectiles mid-fight to create a homing effect, which was not seen in M.U.G.E.N characters prior. Other abilities it has is the function to change the background of the stage through the use of various moves, which was also not seen on characters made prior, and the ability to reverse reversal hitboxes, allowing it to hit previously invincible opponents and negate OHKO attacks, which gives it the ability to KO many cheap characters like the second Death Star and A-Bomb. I've also found that Angle Draw Sphere has a fan community, which is very cute. Here's a GTA mod for it. I love that. What a cute character. These next few entries are about like the coding quirks of M.U.G.E.N, and specifically like the specific functions of cheap characters. So like I said before, this is all going way over my head. I'm trying to make this as understandable as possible, but please feel free to correct me if any of this stuff is wrong or weird. Definitely go take a look at these yourself if you are interested in seeing how the M.U.G.E.N sausage is made. The Omega Tom Hanks killer is a method used by cheap characters to bypass invincibility caused by characters having a total lack of hurt boxes, such as its namesake, Omega Tom Hanks. Normally, a state change function can be used on invincible characters to modify them, directly allowing them to be defeated. However, those functions typically have to be applied on hit, which is impossible for characters with no hurt boxes. These methods involve finding a way to change the opponent into a custom state without actually hitting them, such as a state overflow or a null reversal, which works on the principle of reversal type moves, only requiring an opponent's attack hitbox, but not an opponent's actual hurt box. This was significantly easier to pull off in M.U.G.E.N. However, due to a hard limit of state controllers in 1.0 onward, workarounds have been discovered by people such as 2OS and Black Curum that use reversal def function instead. Conson, also known as Chaos Killer or F1 Killer, is another method of defeating cheap characters, in this case characters with F1 immunity. This is a more advanced workaround for characters that will not be affected by any form of damage-based OHKOs and can only be defeated by using changes to their actual living state. From what I understand, this typically works by flooding the screen with helpers, functionally the code for an assist character, which is what allows for a lot of cheap character shenanigans to work, which then captures the data of the opponent's helpers, allowing the character to then target the root of said helpers and send it into a kill state. There's another method called Variable Chaos by characters such as Onimiko X, who we will be discussing much later, that tracks the opponent's state changes in an attempt to discover like a weak point and exploit it. Parent change is another method of OHKO, however this one goes right over my head. From what I can tell, it's fairly similar to Chaos Killer in the way that it abuses the function of helpers to manipulate the effects of the parent, or the entity that created the helper, which seems in most cases to be the character itself, although it can be other helpers in some situations, and it isn't the same thing as the root, which seems to always be the character. Mainly the process seems to be overflowing the variable which controls the parent using a crosstalk dummy, the parent address, and the parent ID that addresses stores, then giving you access to the game time variable of the helper, where abusing that allows you to pull off all kinds of nonsense. I can't say I know what even half those words mean, and the only information I could find in English on this method comes from the M.U.G.E.N Technology and Tricks wiki, which, while being likely entirely legible for those who know about character coding, is far beyond me and self-admittedly outdated, so I suppose this entry is ripe for correction in the next video. Okay, this is the last time I'll say this. This is another long one. This one actually had a lot of information that I could both find and reasonably parse, and was extremely interesting to me, so be prepared for that. This one's working backwards a little bit. Instant death refers to functions that cause the opponents to, well, die instantly. It's actually much more interesting than that. This is mainly used to get around opponents who have some function that prevents being knocked out by massive amounts of damage or underflowed amounts of damage, like a constantly resetting life value or managing their life in the form of a variable. variable. There are 3 ways to do this outlined in Zydia's blog, who I mentioned in the last video, and I'm so glad it's relevant this time. First is the instant death throw, which works when the move lands a hit like a normal attack. This technique changes the opponent's state to one present in the other character's state file, which in this case of the technique has been set up to cause an immediate knockout. Think of this as something like Harmless Offering in Magic the Gathering, if you recognize that. Normally, under no circumstance do you want your opponent's state to be changed to one of your own character's states. Things will usually just get a little weird, but in this case it's exactly what we needed. However, due to the state effectively being queued up behind some of the opponent's states before it can take effect, if they have a change state function in any of those states, the effect will be cancelled, which can be fixed by having a guard controller function in all of your character states. There exists a less commonly used counter to this method as well, called the instant death return, that allows you to set an opponent's state to their own instant kill state for characters that possess this specific state themselves. The next is simply the instant death method, which is by far the most consistent and uses the reversal death function that we see sometimes in newer implementations of the Omega Tom Hanks killer, allowing you to change your opponent's state upon landing a reversal. However, this requires the ability to interact with an opponent's attack hitbox, specifically their CLSN1 box, which is only active for about 2 frames during the start of an attack. This may require full screen hitboxes or helpers, but has the benefit of going through hit override functions or lack of hurt boxes, again as seen with Omega Tom Hanks. The final method is instant death fall, which, although requires you to once again be actually able to hit your opponent, changes their state into one of M.U.G.E.N's default states that calculates fall damage, which in this case is set to just shy of 1,000,000 damage, bypassing a lot of variable or negative life shenanigans. This also has the benefit of bypassing an enemy's self-state function, due to the change not being into a custom state but to one of M.U.G.E.N's defaults. All of these methods, however, will not get around the function absolute self-state, which prevents any form of external state change from occurring. Also, another aside, I'd really like to know where M.U.G.E.N's default fall damage state is actually used, because I don't think I've ever actually seen a character that calculates fall damage. That is super weird to me, but I'd like to know what the correct implementation of that is, and if there are any major examples of that. Alright, and finally, we are at the double dipping lightning round. This is stuff that was on the tier 3 of these icebergs, but was also covered in previous iceberg tiers. A little bit of shenanigans for dealing with 3 or 4 other icebergs. So let's get it. M.U.G.E.N Free-for-All, one of the oldest currently active M.U.G.E.N forms, second only to the Fighters Guild. Also the second largest content warehouse, just behind the archive. Known for very frequent downtimes. KOF Memorial, King of Fighters full game created by Zalsama. Very faithful to the original source material, however also known for some extreme difficulty in certain releases. No Context M.U.G.E.N, Twitter account that posts clips and screenshots of users submitted M.U.G.E.N clips, specifically some of the most inexplicable scenes that are perfect to show people who are not familiar with M.U.G.E.N. The trailer pinned on their account is a perfect demonstration of what they're about. The Black Heart, horror-themed fighting game made in Ikemen by Andre Borghi. Characters are generally well loved and have multiple releases in M.U.G.E.N itself, even by Borghi. Chuck Norris, one of the all-time classic cheap characters, based on Joseph Joestar sprites from Heritage for the Future, and nearly entirely unkillable, has multiple OHKO supers, and basically lives up to all the old Chuck Norris jokes and memes. Ikemen, open-sourced engine remake of M.U.G.E.N, including multiple new features like netplay. Content for M.U.G.E.N works on Ikemen with a couple of minor modifications. Games made with Ikemen have full license to be published, unlike M.U.G.E.N, as seen with the Black Heart. Ronald McDonald Edits. This is like the 3rd time I'm talking about this. Oh my god. Donald McDonald is one of, if not the most edited character in M.U.G.E.N history. From style conversions, cheap edits, and weird joke characters, he's an absolute fan favorite to remix. This is all you get this time. I'm not showing my feet again. Ruben Key, one of the most celebrated creators in M.U.G.E.N history, known for Evil Ryu, Evil Ken, and the mind-blowing Dragon Claw. Has had many other accolades in his life, from athletics to bodybuilding to scoring films. Tragically passed away in 2007 in a boating accident. Toho Edits. Toho characters are another super common target for editing, including both sprite swaps into new characters, cheap edits, and altered movesets. See the comment from the beginning of this video that explains why Toho edits are so popular? Salty bet. I talked about this one briefly in the entry for Sprite Club, a 24/7 M.U.G.E.N stream of random select AI battles that you can bet fictional currency on. Characters compete in tournaments that places them into tiers to make battles more fair for the most part. What does M.U.G.E.N stand for? M.U.G.E.N's title is stylized like an acronym, however the actual meaning behind that acronym has never been publicly released, and it's possible that Electbyte has long forgotten what it even meant to begin with. It's possible it never even meant anything at all. Maybe the real acronym was the friends we made along the way. If you have made it this far, then congratulations. You have received this secret message, and this secret message is thank you for watching. I really greatly appreciate all eyeballs who have set upon my content. Feels good. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the nay. Oh god. Anyway, I'm trying to keep my intro short, so this is just gonna be real basic update. I want to start doing content that isn't Icebergs. Not that I don't like the format anymore, I just have ideas for other things, so you might see that next time. It might be a while until I get to part 4 of this series, because as any of you who have been watching my channel know, this took a long time to come out, and it's not because I don't love making this series. I do. I find all of this super interesting, but for some reason, this has just been burning me out super bad. As Koi probably knows, where he's prodding me every week or so, going, hey, how's the video coming? Dude, I'm trying. Oh god. But yeah, no, so expect that to come out whenever. I can't give a timeline for that. This one took like 4 months. Other content to come. Yeah, otherwise I have no idea what else to say. I don't want to push channel membership too hard because I don't want to sound like I'm really money hungry, but I did unlock channel memberships, and it would be super cool if anyone took that offer up. I think everybody that makes YouTube always has that dream of doing it full time, and this is now the closest I've ever become in any sort of internet pursuit to ever actually reaching some sort of level of quote unquote success. So regardless, I'm very happy with how this is going. But yeah, keeping the intro short, not making another 15-minute intro like I did before. Please have a wonderful day and look forward to the next thing that appears on here. Anyway, this has been Sungazer, and goodbye.